Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 25th, 2020. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast where we offer organizing strategies and tips and answer your questions and tackle topic suggestions that we get from you guys, the viewers and listeners of the podcast, and we really appreciate your participation.
Before we get started with today's topics, a few quick notes for anybody joining us for the first time. If you're participating in the Zoom meeting, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature to let me know you're willing to comment on video or
live and in person.
Live voice only if you prefer, if you don't want to be on video. We're streaming live on Facebook, and so you can also share your questions and suggestions there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. And during the live webcast every Tuesday, you can talk to us directly by calling 669-900-6833. Use meeting ID 993-419-863 to join the meeting. That meeting ID is the same every week. So
same phone number and same meeting ID and all that.
Yeah, you can save that and call in any week on Tuesday.
Anytime.
Okay, so let's get right to it. In response to our recent topic of digital decluttering, viewer My Imaginations UK wrote, I think I need to add digital into my filing routine. Stopping push notifications was a life changer. Less squirrel moments. I get overstimulated easily, so I normally last 3 days on a mailing list on average. She suggested a few topics for a future installment of digital decluttering suggestions. And she said, love your videos. I watched them a couple of times to let all the good ideas sink in.
We came to the same conclusion about the digital topic when we did it 2 weeks ago now, that we hadn't even scratched the surface, and we had enough material for a whole bunch of more shows about digital organizing. So I'm sure that will return to the topic list soon. One of the point that she's trying to make here is that you're managing your digital data just like you manage your physical paper, and the process is a maintenance routine in both instances. You have to maintain the email, you have to maintain the photos, you have to maintain the digital footprint that you create, just like you manage your own files and things. If you get 200 emails a day, then you need a routine to handle 200 emails a day, or you'll always have a backlog, and then you'll be one of those people with 45,000 unopened emails in your system, which always seems like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It can, you can just leave it there and who cares. But then it's also, at what point is it a performance issue for the machines that you're using, and how do you find things that you want again if you leave 45,000 things unopened? And so there's some arguments for managing your emails just like you manage your paper mail. And yeah, luckily delete is like my recycling. Exactly. It requires the same amount of attention in processing the physical mail is what I'm really saying. And in order to not clog up your email, you're going to have to create a regular routine that you go through and deal with it. And it's no different than managing the paper. Now, some people are allergic to paper, and managing the digital space will feel less of a chore than managing the actual physical paper, and vice versa. Other people will find the paper more comfortable and the digital much less comfortable. But it's really just a function of your own personal preferences, which one's fun and which one's a chore. But in the end, you're going to have a maintenance routine for both, is what we were saying. And it sounds like that this listener is already doing that, which is great. I love the idea that she's so easily distracted that she signs up for the newsletter and she lasts for 3 days and then she unsubscribes immediately. That's pretty fast.
I have to, I find that I can stay on a daily routine for a while of staying on top of usually yesterday's email. I think you can get too you can experience too many squirrel moments if you pay close attention to today's email. And so following, a suggestion that comes from various different sources, I try to only look at today's email at a couple of stopping points, like 10 in the morning.
Not as when it comes in.
And then again, 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And I've tried to train clients that if it's a burning fire, you should pick up the phone and call me. Don't send me an email, because that's not going to interrupt my work. And then set aside some time to do yesterday's email, all of it.
And that's a productivity thing as well, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
You can't constantly be shifting between email and text messages and the phone and whatever project you're doing all at the same time. Like,
and get any
around
useful,
is super, super inefficient. And so being able to block out some time where you say, okay, I can read an email 4 times a day or 2 times a day or whatever. It's really getting common in corporate environments as well, that people are declaring, I look at email at 10 o'clock, I look at email at 3 o'clock, and the rest of the time, and I'll respond to you then. Like, they make that part of their auto reply, and they're structuring that because they're in an environment where they work in a company with 200 people, and they've got emails and copies of emails coming from every different direction. And if you spend all your time stopping to read those, you would never actually do anything except read your email feed all day long. And so people are really trying to work out ways to manage and what I think of as batch process handling the email, because stopping to answer one at a time and every 10 minutes is not going to be an effective use of your time. And it's better to stop. Like, when we publish a video, for instance, and people start commenting on YouTube, then I start getting email notifications of every comment that people make. And I can't stop while I'm at a client and read all those notifications. I have to save that and come home at night and sit and batch process through the YouTube emails to see who's commented and who I need to reply to. And so handling that stuff in batches is a more productive, efficient way to deal with it. And, depending on your job may be more, time sensitive or whatever, but then you just modify your batching. So instead of twice a day, like Ed's doing it, maybe you have to do it every 2 hours, but you can still ignore the email for an hour and have an hour of focused time on something before you go back to the email. And it's likely that whatever fire has gone off is not burning down the business in an hour.
Right.
Right? Like,
right.
If it's that bad, somebody's going to be standing at your doorway going, oh my God, the building is on fire, right? And then otherwise it can wait an hour while you stay focused on what you need to stay focused on. And so email processing.
I frequently fall behind if things get really busy and I know that I have scanned yesterday's email for anything that needs action and put those things on my list, then I'll sort of ignore the rest. And so it tends to pile up, but I try to make a point at least 2 or 3 times a week of where I've fallen behind, creating a to-do list item for
go look at the mail.
Finish clearing away Tuesday's email.
Well, and you just buried the lead there too, because one of the things you said was you go through the emails and look for the actionable items, and you put those items on the to-do list. You don't stop and do them.
Right.
And so that is also a productivity thing. Like, I blocked out this hour to work on this, and I'm going to look at the email and go, okay, so I have something I have to get done, and here's 5 people that want 5 different things from me, and I'm not going to do them right now. I'm just going to grab them right now and make sure that I know that I need to do them, and then I'm going to work on my work. And so, it's a function of trying to plan how you manage your day so that you can focus for more than 20 seconds on your own work.
Yeah.
Right? And ultimately, I'm sort of forced to do that because I'm in clients' houses. I can't bring my computer. I can't sit there in somebody's home and be on my phone, handling email while I'm schlepping things in somebody's home. And so my work appointments force me to be focused on work. And if somebody's sitting at a desk where they can get interrupted more, then having strategies to manage your attention and focus and scheduling time to work on things you need to work on becomes a process that you have to focus on. It's something that some skill sets you have to learn around managing your workload and your workflow and your project list, and creating some barriers around, don't interrupt me right now. I need an hour to focus on this project.
We could talk a whole lot about productivity
all day long. Yeah.
we're both knowledgeable amateurs.
Yes, that is
category,
true.
so.
That is absolutely true.
Let's get on with our main topic for today. Okay. This was inspired by Denise, our frequent viewer who lives near Lyon in France. And Denise shared an article about charity shops and donating clothes. And the thrust of the article was, you're doing a good thing by donating clothes, but because of the way our clothing economy works now, charity shops and places that take donations are overwhelmed. They get way more than they can find good homes for. And so that sort of gave us the idea of talking about reducing consumption and reducing the amount of stuff that we bring into our homes, that we bring into our spaces. So we've talked about that and thought about some suggestions for ways to avoid buying stuff to save money and space.
Yeah, and this is the idea that you have a huge amount of stuff already in the house, and you're going through the process. In theory, if you're watching channels like mine, you're going through the process of decluttering and trying to change behavior and thin out the contents of your home, and you're trying to reduce the volume of what you keep. And so part of the way that you can make headway is that while you're letting things go on the back end, you can reduce the volume that's coming in on the front end. And so we wanted to talk about ways for you to do that, so that you're not just breaking even all the time by bringing in and letting out the same amount all the time and just constantly shuffling it on the conveyor belt that is your house on the way out. So we thought we'd talk about some of those options.
And in the article Denise shared with us, they talked about, for clothing specifically, instead of buying a whole lot of the current, whatever current fashions are being shown to you, buying fewer but better pieces, things that are worth fixing when something, if they get a little flaw, you mend it instead of replacing it, and taking better care, higher quality items, and taking better care of them.
There's a comic named Fortune Feimster, and she does this whole routine about when she was young in LA trying to start her career, and she got a job as a gossip column reporter. And she was on, the red carpet interviewing people in the outfit because she needed to have a, gossip reporter outfit. And so she went to Forever 21 and bought what did she say? It was a blue velour track suit, basically. And she said, and then she wore it, and then the next day it dissolved in the sun. And it was her commentary about, the clothing is so cheap that it barely lasts more than 3 days after you get it home, right? And we have created this whole industry around, it needs to be fast and cheap so that we can constantly be changing. And, that works for the fashion industry so that they keep themselves rich and well-fed, but it creates this huge backlog on the back end of all of the clothing that has come on this river of stuff that's going out into all of these charity collection locations. And so buying stuff that's better quality and that can be mended sort of returns us to an earlier time before the advent of fast fashion. And I think that what seems like a really good idea as a young person becomes much more of a burden and an irritant as a more mature adult. You know, it's all well and good that you have a million pieces of clothing, but if you don't have the space for them and you're having to shovel them all around and you're having to wear them once or twice and then get them out to Goodwill, like it becomes part of your maintenance routine. If you're into changing fashion all the time, you have then created yourself this whole redistribution project list that becomes part of your life, of how it's part of the cost of participating really heavily in disposable clothes. And so just a thought that maybe you don't want them to you don't want to collect so often, and you want to buy stuff that will last and can be, they're looking at things like capsule wardrobes, and so maybe you want to buy really good quality stuff that can be a capsule wardrobe, and then you're wearing the same things over and over again as we did back in the day, right? And so there is a cost to constantly changing the clothes and constantly buying something new that then is going to be part of a river of stuff that you have to take out later. So just a thought about clothes. And thanks, Denise, for sharing that. I suggested that she go and post that write-up that she sent me privately, put it on the Facebook page so that everybody can read it and follow the links and stuff and see what it was about.
Yeah. So some more categories of things that some of these are going to be, some of them are obvious, but some of them we're hoping may be new to a few viewers. Like, well, my favorite is books. And I went from having a house where I had room for 3,000 books to sharing a space and having to get rid of a whole lot of stuff. And so at that time, I shifted my way I get books. And so once upon a time, my impulse was always buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it. But now, first I check to see whether there's a library ebook. And a lot of people aren't even aware of, I find, of library ebooks, but many public libraries participate in ebook borrowing programs.
Right.
And so you can check with your library and find out if they do that. Mine, Houston Public Library and Harris County Public Library, before my move, both participated using an app called Overdrive. And I put in my library card information, and then I can borrow books for 2 weeks, borrow ebooks for 2 weeks. And so that's always my first choice. And second is
the actual library, probably.
To borrow the physical book. Yeah. And you can frequently order the one you wanted sent to your closest library to pick up. And then, of course, you can buy ebooks. You're spending the money, but it's usually cheaper than the physical book.
So a little bit.
Save some money, and
it's a digital file instead of a physical book.
Right. So it's not taking up any space if you're short of space, and for me, I actually have some vision issues that make ebooks easier to read than paper books for me at this point in my life.
Well, right, and you can always make that's the thing about the digital, like you can adjust the font size so that it's easier to read, right? And so, yeah, you can manipulate the book and how you read it in a digital environment that you can't do physically.
Yeah, and I can.
That's a great idea.
And I can read them in lighting conditions that wouldn't work for reading a paper book for me. So.
Yeah, exactly.
You can also get. You can also borrow magazines in physical versions. Physical versions, I think, usually can only read them in the library. I'm not sure about that, but
you can't take them out.
I think it depends on the library. But you can. There are through the same clearinghouses, you can get some magazines as ebooks.
Right.
And
which is awesome.
Get yourself off those subscriptions. It's less of the paper fire hose coming into
Well, yeah, and unless, if you sit there with it digitally and wait 6 months to read the magazine, you're not trying to live with the paper in your house, and that's always an improvement.
Yeah.
And then you have on the list that you can rent textbooks, which is interesting. Textbooks is such an expensive thing to do, and if you could rent them instead, how much better would that be? Even if you're only renting for your basics classes, the ones that all the freshmen take or all the sophomores take, and you're having to buy what is ultimately going to be in your degree plan, in your degree path, that would cut your costs down a lot, and also mean that you're not, you read the book, and when the class is done, you can give the book back. Like you have no idea how many times I go into people's houses and like a quarter of their library is all of their college textbooks.
Yeah.
90% of them, which are completely out of date, but there's something about when you spend 3 months bleeding over that book and reading it and marking in it and highlighting it, you're so attached to the sufferings that you had over the book. And so you don't want to, it's like, it seems much more valuable than it really is, except that while it's sitting on the shelf, no one that was taking the class the following year or the year after can use it. And 10 years, they've changed the textbooks, they've updated them, and you're out of date. And so I end up taking a lot of textbooks for recycling when I'm clearing them out of people's houses at, they're 50 years old and the textbooks are 25 years old or 30 years old, and like ain't nobody wanting them except as cutouts to cut pictures out of. And and they just become recycling. And so better that you can get yourself to let go of them now, or a year or two, or if you rent them, then they go right back as soon as the class is over, and then you don't have that suffering later.
And another fringe benefit of renting is if you decide to drop a class, then
back it goes.
Yeah,
right, that's true. And
Charlotte added digital newspaper, and that's another good point. For a small subscription, you can usually nowadays replace your newspaper delivery.
And for people that like to look at daily news, actual physical papers they create such a backwash in such a hurry, and it's such a maintenance chore. Like the paper comes every day and you have to be on top of it, just like you have to be on top of mail.
Yeah.
And so a digital version of a newspaper, so that it comes every day and you don't have to like physically move the paper around. Awesome.
Yeah, I think that I gave up newspaper subscriptions because it was much too overwhelming to keep up with the paper,
to manage. And lots of people have that problem. And it's like, I get it that you want the paper, and some people like to hold it in their hands, but I would do things like, even if you modify it, like even if you take the Sunday paper so you can sit around on Sunday and flip through all the paper,
do the crossword
but you
puzzle.
get a digital weekly or something, it's like, even that would reduce your workload of, paper management. And I'm also finding that as we sort of add apartment living in Houston in a way that hasn't been true before, that we've been sort of building high rises in downtown and midtown area for young people to move into, they don't all have recycling programs. So if you have a house here, you're part of the city recycling, but then these apartment buildings don't always have recycling options in the apartment building. And so then you have to like take it out yourself and drive it somewhere. And, not everybody's super dedicated to that.
Yeah.
And what a pain if you were getting a newspaper.
Yeah.
and you couldn't easily recycle it out the front door.
Might have pointed out that you can also check out audiobooks free from the library, and they're a great option in the car. And audiobooks are also everything I do through Overdrive, the ebook borrowing app.
Right.
They also have audiobooks available.
So they list the regular book and the audiobook version?
Yeah, you typically can check out either one for most popular titles.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Another big one, we got rid of our home printer a year or two ago after spending several years on the ink replacement treadmill. We had a little inkjet printer, and I used it so infrequently, it seemed like about every second or third time I used it, it told me, you're out of yellow, you're out of cyan, you're out of magenta. It was a color printer, and all I ever used was black. But what I learned is that they actually engineer these printers to sort of, decrement the amount of ink, whether you're using it or not. They are engineered to run out of ink, whether you've run out of ink or not. It's a little bit of a racket, and they make all their money they lose money on the printers, and they make a fortune on the ink. So they want you to constantly be buying ink, and we got tired of that. And
the inks are more expensive per ounce than drugs on the market, practically.
Yeah, seriously. They make Jaime found an article that said that they make 26,000% markup on the ink.
Oh,
it costs them, 25 cents to make a cartridge, and then they sell a package of cartridges to you for $30.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, my work style has changed, so I don't have to print nearly as much as I used to. I might print 2 or 3 pages a month at most. And so now I just stick it on a thumb drive, and I go down to the apartment little business center where they have computers. When I plug in the thumb drive, print the page I need. Because I find that most things I can make do with keeping the PDF having the PDF on my phone or on my tablet. A lot of times you don't have to print tickets anymore. You can just show up and show a QR code on your ticket
on the phone, and
if you've bought a movie ticket or something like that. And so pretty much all the apartment complexes we looked at the last time when we were shopping recently had some sort of business center where you could go print something. And short of that, you can go to FedEx, a UPS store, Office Max, Office Depot, Staples. All of those will let you print a page or two for a few cents.
And that's one of the benefits of the evolution of our business environment electronically, that, printers came about because we had to have everything printed.
Right.
We were all working on computers, but we still had to have everything printed out in paper form. And that environment has evolved tremendously, so that digital representation of paper is almost 100% acceptable as all over everywhere. And so, we don't have to print as much. I have a printer here, but you're right, mine doesn't get used all the time. And between Penny and I, we end up, I probably print, a lot of what I print is bead patterns. We're printing bead instructions to carry around and work with. And so it's certainly not a big part of my job to print. And so there's ever-growing options here about how you can print without having a printer. And it's sort of like, this is the evolution of printers at home came into fashion and now are slowly going out of fashion as we find alternatives. Just like, we had telephones attached to the wall, and now most of us don't have telephones attached to the wall, right? It's just sliding on by.
And
another
also,
one is, go ahead.
Public libraries
typically they always have printers there.
You can go in and print a page or two. I don't think they want you printing 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
But then if you have a larger print job, if you have a manual and you want this 50-page thing, you can send that off to FedEx or to most of the office stores. And
to UPS.
They will, print it and have it waiting when you go to pick it up.
Yeah, which is awesome. And you're going to pay for it, but that's going to be infinitely more cheap than buying the printer and buying the ink at home all the time.
Cheaper than the endless supply of cartridges.
Right. So another one is we skipped small kitchen appliances.
Yeah.
That is a good one for, sure, we can all have those millions of kitchen appliances, or you can share one amongst your friends and neighbors, or you can go on to the neighborhood board and say, hey, I want to try some bread making today. Does anybody want to loan me their bread maker? I mean, there is something to be said for, we don't all have to own our own individual one. When we're first learning, when we're first trying it out, why not borrow something from a friend? And, call one of your girlfriends and say, hey, don't you have a mix master, and can I borrow it for the weekend to make some stuff? And then you don't have to keep it 52 weeks out of the year for the week that you're going to use it at Christmas time to make holiday cookies or fill in the blank. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's worth the effort to try to track one down amongst your friends to borrow it, and then you're not out the money and you don't have the storage problem, because when you're done with it, it goes back to your friend to be stored. And if you find that you use it and love it, and then it can be a secondary layer between I've had the thought that I might want to do this or I might want to try it and I'm going to buy it. Now you don't have to commit to experiment. You can rent and borrow to experiment and then decide, okay, that was terrible. And what comes to mind right now is a friend of mine who is creative. I'm going to call Sandy out. Hi, Sandy. She will hear this later. She is a beader and has been an avid beader for a long time. And she decided that she was going to try quilting because she's crafty and it seemed like it'd be a good time. And so she went a little nuts and she bought sewing machines and she bought fabric and she went and took a quilting class. And she said she has never been more miserable than while she was in that class. She cried. It was horrible. And she had an awful experience. And now she's perfectly clear that although quilting seemed like a good idea, it was not for her.
Not a good fit.
And so she has all this equipment and stuff that she bought that she now has to dispose of. And so that brings us to, this is why you go to maker spaces to rent crafting equipment, tools to make art, because there are very expensive tools for if you're going to be a metal worker, if you're going to be a woodworker, if you are going to do
jewelry
major
making,
quilting, jewelry making, and you're going to be using tools and equipment, and that kind of stuff it's expensive entry. And so if you're going to try out the craft, go rent those equipments, go to those maker spaces and work in the maker space, and then you're paying a use fee instead of investing in all that equipment and having the experience like Sandy had where she cried. And for a crafty person, that's like really a bummer to decide that you don't like that craft and it's not fun for you. It's sad. And it's sad that she tried it but she hated it. But at least now she knows, and although fabric is taunting and beautiful, she doesn't need to buy it at the volume you buy it for quilting. She can buy little pieces that she can occasionally use for beadwork, and otherwise, she's out of that game. And so, it was an expensive lesson for her to learn, and I think a lot of crafters do that. They're like, ooh, I saw this new craft. I need to go buy all these supplies, and they run off to the craft store and buy, $500 worth of stuff, and then go, I don't like that one. I don't enjoy that craft. And so, again, it's a way to interrupt the consumption and disposal process if you have a thought and then figure out a way to test your thought before you invest in owning. And renting equipment in a makerspace, or renting, you go and pay for an hour or two of use time in a makerspace so that you can experiment and learn. And I think that's a good way to keep from taking everything home with you.
Well, and I think I took some woodworking classes once upon a time, and I would love to be able to do that on a regular basis, but the equipment is tremendously expensive. And
big, like it's not something you can sit in the house. It has to be in a special space with large ventilation.
Yeah, and there are pieces that no one could, almost no one. I mean, a serious woodworker who's making equipment to sell is going to have a wood shop with a planer and all the joining equipment. But it's much more practical for somebody who wants to do it once in a while to find a makerspace. I don't know if everybody will be familiar with that concept, but if you put in your search engine makerspace, you can do it as one word or two, and the name of where you live, you can see if there's one near you. Most big cities have one or more of them, and these are places that have a wood shop, a metal shop, machining tools, and art studios where you can do jewelry or ceramics or
Yeah, pottery and they have all the big, here's the big kiln, here's the big
right.
potter's wheel, here's the all that stuff, so that it's a large equipment that requires a large space, and you can access it for use, occasional use.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a good idea.
I want to throw in a comment from Bill Goddard. He sounds familiar.
He does.
He says, audiobooks are my current favorite. I load them onto my phone and listen while I walk. Every morning I spend a solid hour at the local Y walking the track and reading a book. Works out very
listening
well.
to audiobooks. There you go. See? And I've seen my dad's collections of books. Thank you for watching, Daddy. Hi. And oh my God, it is so, there have been times before he moved to North Carolina, where there was walls and walls of books everywhere in one room in particular. But, he's a book guy just like you, and there are books everywhere. So how great that he is making good use of audiobooks so he can do his thing and be entertained and distracted, because, I have to be distracted when I exercise. It's great use of audiobooks. You can't walk and hold a book in the same time, and so great way to consume it and not end up with the physical book in the back end.
Now back to the topic of tools, if you do occasional home improvement projects, but not enough to justify keeping all of those things in your house and spending your money. Someone in YouTube comments recently turned us on to the idea of tool lending libraries.
Oh, right.
They're not everywhere, but you can check to see whether there is one. But tool rental stores are everywhere. And so, if you have just the occasional project, you can go and rent a drill for a weekend to do that thing you had in mind.
Yeah.
You can also rent garden tools. So if you just have one project a year where you're putting in a new bed, you can go rent shovels and a wheelbarrow and the things that you're going to use for one weekend or a week or two, and then take them back. And there's
be done
actually
with them and not store them.
One of the branches of the Houston Public Library now has
a garden tool lending library
of garden tools, and anyone who has a Houston Library card can sign a waiver and check out the tools they need.
Go check out tools. And I think this is going to become an ever expanding trend as we shift to downsizing into smaller spaces, as apartment living gets bigger. And when you live in an apartment, you don't have a garage, and you barely have an attached storage space in the building somewhere, and so you can't keep garden tools, you can't keep a bunch of woodworking tools. Like, that's one of the biggest things that people have to dispose of when they downsize from, I'm living in a single family dwelling, to I am now going to live in some kind of community living apartment complex. I'm going to move to a smaller house that isn't going to have a big garage, that kind of stuff. And so it will be part of the adjustment that we still want to be able to do some of those things, but we're not going to be able to keep an entire garage is full of tools and have some place to store them and use them like you do when you have your own house. And so it is the purpose of lending libraries to give you access to that stuff, even though you don't have a space to store it long term.
And another category, even if you have a house, even if you have a big house, there are things that just take up an inordinate amount of space and use infrequently, like extension ladders. You might have to get up and clean the gutters once a year.
Yeah.
And then you have to store the extension ladder the other 360 days a year. And that's something you can rent.
Which would be, like to bring it home and use it and take it back and get it out of your face. I'm going to shift to there's one, in my daily work in clients' houses, I try to use a creative reuse of storage containers in deploying in the house, so that it's not always about me trying to buy them new and fancier storage equipment. I want to try to use what they already have. So we go searching for all the things in the house that could work, that might be useful. And we also do a lot of repurposing. And I have a new subscriber in Italy who was talking about how she creatively takes her container, and she doesn't worry about them being clear. She would rather them be decorative. And so she takes cardboard boxes and other kinds of containers, and then she decorates the outside of them. And so she talked about one that had, she had covered in fabric and trimmed with pearls, and one she had covered in family photographs and sort of made a photographic collage on the outside of the box. So she's sort of taking her containers that she has already and repurposing them and decorating them to fit, and to, cutting them down to fit the use that she has, and then decorating them to her liking and interest. And so you can repurpose things in the house and save yourself a trip to buy new containers. And I evaluate that depending on, if they don't have anything, then we're going to go to the store. We're going to go buy containers. But often people have already tried that. They bought a bunch of containers without thinking about how they're going to use them, and then they have a bunch of empty containers in the house. And so I can often go say, do you have something that we can use to do this, this, and this? And they go, oh yeah, and they go running in another room, and out comes 15 containers that are empty and they haven't been able to figure out what to do with them. And so then I figure out what to do with them instead. And there's simple things like, everybody has drawers that they need to have, segmented space in and sorters in them. And you don't always have the little, it's an inch high and it fits in a shallow drawer containers. But you can always come up with Ziploc food containers that fit into the drawers, or you can cut down cardboard. Here's a cereal box, and you can cut down the box to an inch tall and make a container that's long and narrow. Or, there's all sorts of things that you can trim down to the right height to fit into a drawer and help segment a drawer. And so what immediately comes to mind is, how do you contain a junk drawer so that the stuff isn't just a constant, moving tide of stuff floating up and down in the space? And how you do that is add a bunch of little containers in there and experiment. And again, this is the interim between I'm buying a bunch of new containers and seeing whether they work. Instead, cut down and reuse some things you've already got and see if you like the layout. And then if you do, then you can go with a better idea of what you need to get and buy fancy ones if you want fancy. But in the meantime, your Ziploc food containers, your Gladware, your mason jars, those can be used to contain stuff in places that you're trying to subset within a cabinet, within a drawer, within a closet, and make use of those little containers that you already have around the house. And you have too much plastic in your kitchen anyway, so you might as well use it for other stuff.
Denise commented that her daughter decorates shoe boxes to store small things.
Right.
And she makes, beautiful objects out of them.
Right. And if you are doing that, then you have to remember that you've uncovered, you've blocked off your ability to see what's in there. So you need to also create a bunch of labeling so that you can say there's this is the box with fill in the blank, and it's some kind of label in the box, and incorporate that into the decoration so that you like the label as well.
And Petra added she used a bunch of small glass votive holders inside drawers.
Yeah,
so I think
if
for
they're
little
short
tiny
enough,
things,
right? Yeah, that would work. Well, think about I would put little votive holders, because they were small and they'll slide, sit them inside of a box top so that they don't all move around. You can contain them in a shoebox top that's only half an inch tall. Then you basically have a tray, and you can sit them all in a tray, and then they will stay within the tray.
So we had a couple of questions on Facebook that I want to address. Mark our friend Mark,
Oh, hi, Mark.
asked about a workspace that has tools, and that's the makerspace we were talking about. I shared
Right.
the link on Facebook for txrxlabs.org. That's the makerspace in Houston,
Cool.
where they have a membership model, so you have to become a member at a certain level. I think you could, at $50 a month, something like that, you can use their tool shops on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. At a higher level of membership, you can use it unrestricted anytime,
Yeah.
and that gives you space to work on whatever project you want in their lab. We have more on this topic, so I think we're going to have to return to this
Cover
topic
it again. Right.
more. And so we really need to wrap up. I want to remind our viewers and listeners that our YouTube channel contains more than 100 videos on all kinds of organizing topics. Go to cfhou.com/YouTube, and if you subscribe on YouTube, you'll get notifications whenever we post something new. And I want to remind people that our next webcast will be Tuesday, March 3rd at noon Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. So if you want to get notifications, join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. And you can follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook. You can also subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you. So send us your topic suggestions and questions in the YouTube comments or any of the other channels we mentioned, and you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate you, and we love to talk to you, and I really appreciate that you guys always send us great comments. So we will do our best to keep answering them, and we'll be back next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.